Look, I need to tell you something they don't want you knowing. Right now, at this exact moment, there are 30 artifacts sitting in vaults around the world that nobody dares open. Not because of some ancient curse, not because of superstition, but because the people who've seen what's inside these containers are either dead, missing, or they've spent decades trying to forget what they witnessed. I'm talking about physical objects, metal boxes, stone sarcophagi, sealed chambers, things you can touch, things that exist. And the organizations guarding them, museums, governments, private collections, they all say the same thing when you ask why these artifacts remain sealed. Ongoing analysis, preservation concerns, further study required. But here's what they don't tell you. 3 of these artifacts have killed people. Not metaphorically, actually killed them within hours of opening. And I'm not talking about some mummy's curse nonsense. I'm talking about documented deaths. Medical reports, autopsies that raise more questions than they answer. So why am I showing you this? Because someone needs to. Because the pattern is too obvious to ignore. Because when you line up these 30 objects, scattered across 5 continents, separated by thousands of years, something connects them. Something nobody wants to discuss in public. And by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why certain doors stay locked. Let's start with the easy part. The official story goes like this. Archaeologists and scientists maintain sealed artifacts for legitimate reasons. Climate control, chemical stability, preventing contamination, standard protocol. Sounds reasonable, right? Except here's the first crack in that story. In 1998, a sealed bronze vessel was discovered in a tomb in Shanxi Province, China. Han Dynasty, about 2,000 years old. The vessel weighed 43 pounds. Perfectly sealed with some kind of ancient resin that archaeologists had never encountered before. Standard procedure says you catalog it, X-ray it, run some tests, then open it under controlled conditions. They did the first 3 steps. The X-rays showed liquid inside, about 2 quarts. Still liquid after 2 millennia. That alone was strange. But the density readings didn't match water, didn't match wine, didn't match any known substance from that period. So they scheduled the opening for March 15th, 1999. 3 researchers, full hazmat protocols, sealed laboratory, everything documented. They broke the seal at 9:47 a.m. The first researcher collapsed at 9:51 a.m. 4 minutes later. The second researcher started vomiting blood at 9:53 a.m. By 10:05 a.m., all 3 were in the hospital. By 10:30 a.m., 1 was dead. The official report says, unknown toxin. The vessel was immediately resealed and classified. It sits in a climate-controlled vault in Beijing. Nobody's touched it since. And here's the thing that should bother you. The 2 surviving researchers won't talk about it. One left archaeology entirely, moved to rural Mongolia. The other one gave exactly 1 interview off the record to a colleague. Said 3 words. It was breathing. What does that mean? A liquid that's breathing? The Chinese government classified all findings. No published papers, no follow-up studies. The vessel exists in official records as Han Dynasty Bronze Vessel, Item 739B. Status, sealed pending analysis. Pending analysis. For 25 years. That's artifact number 1. But maybe that's just a weird, isolated incident, right? Ancient chemistry we don't understand, toxic gases, unfortunate accident. Except there's a pattern. Moscow, the State Historical Museum, basement vault. Artifact designation, Sealed container. Origin unknown. Circa 8th century. Found in 1976 during subway construction. Workers drilling through bedrock hit a chamber that wasn't on any map. Inside the chamber, one stone box. Limestone. Covered in symbols nobody could read. The box was 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, 18 inches deep. Weighed approximately 400 pounds. No visible seams, no lid. Just one solid piece of carved stone with a hollow interior. How do you carve a box from the inside with no opening? Soviet scientists studied it for 7 years, used ground-penetrating radar, ultrasound, every scanning technology available in the early 80s. All confirmed the same thing. Hollow interior, organic material inside, no way to access it without destroying the container. In 1983, they decided to cut it open. They used a diamond-tipped saw, worked in a sealed room, took 6 hours to cut through 3 inches of limestone. The moment the saw penetrated the interior cavity, every light in the building went out. Not just the room, the entire museum. And according to witnesses, every light within a 2-block radius. Power company found no explanation, no grid failure, no equipment malfunction. The lights just died. When backup generators kicked in 40 minutes later, the research team found the box resealed. The cut they'd made, 6 hours of precision work, gone. Surface smooth, like they'd never touched it. 3 of the 5 scientists quit within a week. One suffered a complete mental breakdown, started drawing symbols on the walls of his apartment. Same symbols that were on the box. Symbols he'd never studied. Symbols that don't match any known language. The box went back into the vault. Status: analysis ongoing. Nobody's tried to open it since. And here's where it gets interesting. Those symbols the scientist drew, I've seen them before. Not identical, but similar. On an artifact in Peru. And another one in Egypt. And a 4th one in a private collection in Switzerland. Different continents, different time periods. But the symbols cluster around the same geometric patterns. Somebody was using the same language, or the same instructions. So you tell me, what do you think is really inside these sealed containers? Ancient weapons? Biological material that shouldn't exist? Or something we don't have categories for yet? Drop your theory in the comments, because what I'm about to show you next makes both of those cases look simple. Let's talk about the Copper Scroll. You've probably heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient Jewish texts found in caves near Qumran between 1946 and 1956. Religious documents, historical records, standard archaeological treasure. But there's one scroll that doesn't fit, the Copper Scroll. Unlike the others, written on parchment or papyrus, this one was etched into rolled sheets of copper. 99% pure copper. Created around 50 to 100 AD, and instead of religious text or historical narrative, it contains something else entirely. A list. 64 locations, each one with detailed directions. And at each location, a quantity. 40 talents of silver buried 3 cubits deep beneath the eastern cistern. 17 talents of gold in the underground passage of the courtyard. The scroll describes a treasure, massive wealth, hidden across Israel and Jordan. Total estimated value in modern terms, over $1 billion. And here's the problem. Nobody knows if it's real. The locations are vague enough that dozens of excavations have turned up nothing. Some scholars think it's a fantasy document, a work of fiction, an ancient treasure map that leads nowhere. But here's what they don't talk about in the documentaries. 3 of the 64 locations have been found, not by official archaeological teams, by private researchers who went off script. And what they found wasn't gold or silver. At the first location, beneath a cistern in Jerusalem, they found a sealed clay jar. Inside the jar, ash, human ash, mixed with fragments of bone and something else. Small metal objects, shiny, magnetic. Modern metallurgy can't identify the alloy. At the second location, they found another container, this one lead-lined, also filled with ash. But when they opened it, the ash started moving, not from wind. There was no wind in the sealed chamber. It moved like it was alive, crawling across the floor. Investigators sealed the room immediately. 3 days later, the ash had vanished, just gone, stone floor clean. The third location was never opened. The team that found it refused, said the container was humming, vibrating at a frequency they could feel in their teeth. They photographed it, logged the coordinates, and left. All 3 discoveries were suppressed. No official papers, no museum displays. The researchers were paid significant sums to stay quiet. One of them gave an anonymous interview years later. Said the organizations that paid them weren't universities, weren't governments. Private entities. No names, just cash and non-disclosure agreements. So the copper scroll sits in the Jordan Museum in Amman, perfectly preserved, studied, photographed. But nobody's actively searching for the remaining 61 locations. Why? Because somebody already found them. Or somebody knows what they really contain. And it's not gold. Now you're probably thinking, okay, these are interesting stories, but where's the proof? Where's the physical evidence? Fair question. Let me show you something that exists in plain sight. The Getty Museum in Los Angeles. Public museum. You can visit anytime. In their antiquities collection, there's an object called the Orphic gold tablets. Small sheets of gold foil, inscribed with Greek text. Found in graves across southern Italy and Greece. Dated between the 4th and 2nd centuries BC. The tablets were placed in the mouths of the dead. Instructions for the afterlife. How to navigate the underworld. What to say to the guardians. Where to drink from the correct spring. 19 tablets have been found. 18 are on display or in storage at various museums. 1 is sealed. The Getty acquired it in 1994. Provenance unclear. Private collector. Standard authentication process. Everything checked out. When they first examined it, they noticed something different. This tablet was thicker than the others. Not a single sheet of gold foil, multiple layers, folded, sealed with some kind of adhesive that shouldn't exist in ancient Greece. They planned to separate the layers, standard conservation work. The conservator working on it noticed the gold was warm, not room temperature, warmer, about 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Body temperature. She put it down, checked the environmental controls. Room temperature was a stable 68 degrees. She picked up the tablet again, still warm. She logged the anomaly, recommended further testing before proceeding. That night, the tablet disappeared from the conservation lab. It reappeared 3 days later in the same location, perfectly placed, exactly where it had been. But now it was cold, and the seal had been reinforced. Someone had added a modern resin around the edges. Amateur work, visible to the naked eye. The Getty conducted an internal investigation, found nothing. No security footage showed anyone entering or leaving the lab. Motion sensors never triggered. Digital access logs showed no unauthorized entry. The tablet was reclassified, not suitable for display. It sits in a vault, climate-controlled, monitored 24/7. And here's the detail that keeps me up at night. The conservator who first examined it, she left the Getty 6 months later, moved to Iceland, changed careers entirely. Stopped answering questions about antiquities. But before she left, she told one colleague something off the record. She said, when she held the tablet, she heard whispering. Not in the room, inside her head. Greek words she didn't know, but somehow understood. The words said, "We are still here." So now we've got a pattern. Chinese bronze vessel, toxic, kills researchers. Russian stone box, cuts itself, drives scientists insane. Dead Sea locations, ash that moves. Greek gold tablet, warm, whispering. 4 different cultures, 4 different time periods. Same result, don't open. But why? Let me show you what connects them. Every single one of these artifacts was discovered in a sealed underground location. Not just buried, deliberately hidden in chambers, with markers, with warnings. Someone went to extraordinary effort to put these things underground and make sure they stayed there. The Chinese vessel was in a tomb that required 3 separate seals to enter. Not normal for Han Dynasty burials. The Russian box was in an unmapped chamber beneath Moscow. No entrance, no exit. Just solid bedrock with a hollow cavity. The copper scroll locations were all beneath structures, cisterns, passages, underground rooms. The gold tablet came from a grave that was itself inside a cave. Double burial. Somebody was hiding things, not treasuring them, hiding them. And across thousands of years, across completely different civilizations that never had contact with each other, they all used the same method. Seal it, bury it deep, mark it so others know to stay away. But here's the thing that official archaeology refuses to address. If these were just dangerous materials, toxic substances, volatile chemicals, whatever, why the elaborate containers? Why the symbols? Why the precision engineering to create vessels that last millennia? You don't need a perfectly sealed bronze vessel to store poison. You don't need a solid stone box carved from the inside to contain dangerous gas. You need those things to contain something that might escape. There's an artifact in the British Museum that nobody talks about. Officially, it doesn't exist. Not in the public catalog, not in the research database. But it's there. I know because a former curator told me about it, off the record, years after retirement. In 1923, British archaeologists working in southern Iraq found a clay jar, Parthian period, around 200 BC. The jar was sealed with bitumen, standard preservation technique. But this jar was different. It had a copper cylinder inside, and inside the copper cylinder, an iron rod suspended by asphalt. The rod wasn't touching the cylinder walls, just hanging there, perfectly centered. When they cleaned it, they found residue inside the copper cylinder, acidic, similar to vinegar or citrus juice. The archaeologists realized what they had: an ancient battery. Electrochemical cell, functional design. Creates voltage through oxidation-reduction reaction between copper and iron in an acidic electrolyte. Problem: this technology shouldn't exist in 200 BC. Electricity wasn't discovered until the 1700s. Batteries weren't invented until the 1800s. So the jar went to the British Museum. They studied it, published papers, called it the Baghdad Battery. acknowledged it could theoretically produce voltage, then filed it away. But here's what the retired curator told me. There were 12 jars, not one, 12 identical vessels, all found in the same excavation, all with the same copper-iron acid configuration. 11 of those jars are in the British Museum vault, sealed, never opened since acquisition. One jar was opened in 1968. Private examination, no official record. The copper cylinder inside that jar wasn't empty. It contained a small glass vial, about the size of your thumb, filled with liquid, clear, odorless. The researcher who opened it touched one drop of the liquid to a piece of copper wire. The wire began to glow, not from heat, just luminescence. Pale blue light, lasted for 17 minutes before fading. They sealed the jar immediately, tested the wire. No radiation, no chemical residue, no explanation. The jar was reclassified, all documentation sealed under the Official Secrets Act. The researcher was transferred to a different department, never worked on antiquities again. The other 11 jars remain sealed. Official status, storage. Further study pending approval. Approval from whom? Nobody knows. Or nobody's saying. You starting to see the pattern yet? Every time someone opens one of these artifacts, actually opens it, breaks the seal, looks inside, something happens that can't be explained. And immediately after, the artifact gets locked away, study ends, public access denied, researchers reassigned or silenced.
It's not about protecting the artifacts. It's about protecting us from what's inside them, or protecting something else. Let me show you what I mean. There's a monastery in Tibet, Gelug tradition, been there for over 600 years. In the lowest chamber, carved directly into the mountain, there's a stone vault. Inside the vault, a sealed copper urn. The monks don't know what's in it, neither did their predecessors. The oral tradition says the urn was already ancient when the monastery was founded in the 1400s, that it was there before Buddhism reached Tibet, before recorded history in that region. The inscription on the urn is in a language nobody can read, not Sanskrit, not Tibetan, not Chinese, just symbols, geometric patterns. In 1984, a team of Western researchers got permission to study the urn. Ground-penetrating radar, spectroscopy, non-invasive analysis. The scans showed something inside, organic material, but the density was wrong. Too light to be stone, too heavy to be fabric. And it was arranged in a pattern, symmetrical, geometric, like something constructed, not placed, constructed. The researchers asked permission to open it. The monks refused, said their tradition forbids it, that the urn must remain sealed until the time of recognition. What's the time of recognition? The monks wouldn't say, just that they'll know when it arrives. The researchers left, published a paper about the analysis, noted the anomaly, moved on to other projects. But one of them didn't move on. He went back, alone. 1991. Bribed his way into the monastery at night, brought tools, planned to open the urn and document what was inside. They found him the next morning, unconscious, nose bleeding. The urn was untouched, still sealed. When he woke up, he couldn't speak. Not physically mute, just couldn't form words. Doctors found no neurological damage, no stroke, no injury. His brain scans were normal. But he couldn't speak for 6 months. When his speech finally returned, he refused to discuss what happened, refused interviews,
refused to even acknowledge the incident. Colleagues said he changed, became obsessed with meditation, sold everything, moved to India. Last anyone heard, he was living in a cave in Ladakh. The urn remains sealed. The monks continue their vigil. And here's the detail that ties everything together. 3 months after the incident, a linguistics expert analyzed photographs of the symbols on the urn, compared them to other undeciphered scripts, found matches. Easter Island, Rongo script, similar geometric patterns. Indus Valley, Harappan seals, same angular formations. And the stone box in Moscow, the one that resealed itself, same symbol clusters, different continents, different millennia, same language. Somebody was writing the same warnings. So what are we really talking about here? Let's be clear. We're not talking about curses. We're not talking about supernatural mumbo-jumbo. We're talking about physical objects that produce measurable effects that modern science can't explain. Liquids that remain liquid for 2,000 years and kill people who open them. Boxes that repair their own damage. Ash that moves on its own. Metal that produces light from a drop of ancient liquid. Symbols that appear across civilizations that never had contact. And in every case, every single case, the response is the same. Seal it. Hide it. Stop asking questions. Why? Here's my theory. And before you dismiss it, consider the evidence. What if these aren't artifacts in the traditional sense? What if they're not treasures or religious items or burial goods? What if they're warnings? Think about it. If you wanted to hide something dangerous, something that could survive thousands of years and still pose a threat, how would you do it? You'd seal it in the most durable container possible. You'd bury it deep. You'd mark it with warnings in every language you knew. And you'd make the container itself dangerous to open. A deterrent. A test. Because if future civilizations were advanced enough to get past the seals, they'd be advanced enough to handle what was inside. Or so they hoped. But we're not. We open these things with curiosity, not caution. We treat them like archaeological prizes. We ignore the warnings because we think we know better. And people die. Or worse, they survive and wish they hadn't. There's an artifact in a private collection in Geneva that proves my point. The collector won't be named. The artifact won't be photographed. But it exists. I've talked to someone who's seen it. It's a sphere, black stone, about 8 inches in diameter. Perfectly smooth, perfectly round. Found in Turkey in 2003, Byzantine-era site. Should be around 1400 years old. But carbon dating doesn't work on stone, and there are no tool marks. No evidence of how it was shaped. Modern laser measurement shows the sphere is accurate to within 0.03 millimeters. That's precision engineering, better than most factories can achieve today. The collector bought it at auction, paid $60,000, thought it was a curiosity, an engineering marvel from the ancient world. He kept it in his study, on a pedestal, liked showing it to guests. After 3 months, he noticed something strange. The sphere was moving, not rolling, not tipping, just slowly rotating in place, clockwise. About 1 full rotation every 72 hours. He set up cameras, confirmed the movement, checked for vibrations, for magnetic fields, for any external force that could cause rotation. Nothing. The sphere was rotating on its own. He contacted scientists. They were skeptical, came to examine it, saw the rotation themselves, set up experiments, isolated the sphere in a vacuum chamber, still rotating. One researcher calculated the energy required.
To maintain that rotation for potentially thousands of years would require a power source that defied known physics. They recommended opening it, drilling a core sample, finding out what was inside. The collector agreed. They used a diamond-tipped drill, started at the pole of rotation, worked slowly. At a depth of 2 millimeters, the drill bit shattered. Not dulled, shattered, like hitting hardened steel. But the sphere was stone. Basalt, probably. Relatively soft. They tried again with a tungsten carbide bit. Same result. Shattered. Third attempt, industrial laser. Point-focused, capable of cutting through titanium. The laser burned for 20 minutes, left no mark. The sphere's surface didn't even heat up. Whatever that sphere is made of, it's not natural stone. The collector stopped trying to open it, put it back on the pedestal, continued to watch it rotate. But here's where it gets worse. 6 months after the failed drilling attempts, the collector started having dreams. Same dream every night. He's standing in a large chamber. Stone walls, no doors, no windows. And in the center of the chamber, 30 spheres, all rotating, all different sizes. He wakes up counting them. Always 30. Always the same configuration. His psychologist called it obsession. Prescribed medication. Didn't help. The collector tried to sell the sphere. Found no buyers. The people he contacted wouldn't touch it. Word had spread in the antiquities community. The sphere that couldn't be opened. The sphere that caused dreams. It sits in his vault now, still rotating. He doesn't look at it anymore, but he can't get rid of it. And he still dreams about the chamber, the 30 spheres. Still counting them every night. 30. The same number I'm telling you about. Now let me ask you something. What if the 30 artifacts I'm describing aren't random? What if they're connected? Part of a system? What if someone, some civilization we don't have records of, deliberately created 30 sealed containers and hid them across the world? What would be the purpose? Storage? Preservation? A warning system? Or something else entirely? Let me show you one more piece of the puzzle before we break. In 2011, a deep-sea exploration team found something on the bottom of the Baltic Sea, 60 meters down. Sonar anomaly, circular structure, about 60 feet in diameter. They called it the Baltic Sea anomaly. Media speculated, ancient shipwreck, natural formation, UFO. The team dove to examine it, found a disc-shaped object, stone, covered in silt. But the surface underneath the silt was smooth, worked. And there were markings, linear patterns, geometric designs. They took samples. The stone was granite, local to the area, but the formation was too regular to be natural, looked constructed, like a platform or a lid. A lid to what? They tried to dig around it. See how deep it went. But 20 feet down, they hit another layer. Metal. Corroded, but definitely metal. Bronze, analysis suggested. But bronze doesn't corrode in seawater the way this metal had corroded. The oxidation pattern was wrong. Suggested exposure to air, then submersion. Like it had been on land, then the sea level rose. Which means it's older than 8,000 years. That's when the Baltic Sea formed. 8,000 years ago, we were barely farming. We weren't working bronze. We weren't building 60-foot stone structures. So what is it? The team wanted to excavate, bring in heavy equipment, lift the disc, see what was underneath. They applied for permits, got rejected.
Environmental concerns, protected waters, standard bureaucratic barriers. But one team member told a different story. Said they received a visit. 3 men. No government badges, no official credentials. Just a quiet conversation. An offer of funding for a different project. Anywhere they wanted.
Any research they wanted, as long as they stopped diving at that location. They took the money, moved to the Mediterranean, never went back to the Baltic. The disk is still down there, still undisturbed. Maritime law protects it. No one's allowed to touch it. But here's the thing that connects it to everything else. Those geometric patterns on the surface, they match the symbols on the Russian stone box, and the Tibetan urn, and the copper scroll locations. Same language, same warnings. 8,000 years ago, someone put something on the bottom of what would become the Baltic Sea, and marked it with symbols that would appear across the world for the next 8 millennia. Who were they? What did they hide? And why are those same symbols still showing up on sealed artifacts we're too afraid to open? I'm going to end part 1 here, let you process what I've just shown you. We've covered 7 artifacts so far, 7 out of 30, each one sealed. Each one deadly or dangerous or impossible to open, each one marked with symbols that connect to the others. But that's just the surface. In part 2, I'm going to show you the artifacts that are actively being hidden. The ones governments deny exist. The ones that private collectors have vanished people over. The ones that connect to locations you've heard of, but never understood. And I'm going to show you physical evidence. Documents, photographs, testimony from people who've actually seen what's inside some of these containers. Because 3 of the 30 have been opened. Successfully. Completely. And what they found inside, well, that's why the other 27 stay sealed. But before we get there, I need you to understand something. There's an artifact I haven't mentioned yet, number 8 on the list. It's in the United States, in a vault beneath a museum you've definitely heard of. And it's the only one that's actively trying to be opened. Not by scientists, not by archaeologists, by something inside it. The vault door is reinforced steel, 12 inches thick. Requires 2 separate key codes and a biometric scan to open. And every morning for the past 6 years, security finds new scratches on the inside of the door. Deep scratches. Like something with claws or blades has been working at the metal all night. The artifact inside is a sealed stone coffin, Egyptian, New Kingdom period, about 3,300 years old. And it's empty, or it should be. X-rays show nothing inside. Sonar shows an empty cavity. Every scanning technology confirms nothing there. But something is making those scratches. Something is trying to get out. And in part 2, I'm going to tell you exactly what that something is, because one researcher got too close, opened the wrong file, saw the wrong photograph, and what he found. So let me tell you about the scratches. The Smithsonian won't confirm this. If you ask them directly, they'll redirect you to public relations. Public relations will tell you they don't comment on security matters. And if you push harder, you'll get a polite letter suggesting you focus your research elsewhere. But I've seen the photographs. Maintenance logs from the sub-basement vault. Dated entries going back 6 years. Each morning the same report. Surface damage observed on interior vault door. Origin undetermined. No unauthorized access detected. The scratches are deep. 3 parallel lines, evenly spaced,
about 4 inches apart, carved into steel that's designed to withstand explosives. And they're always fresh. Security runs checks every night at closing. Door is clean. Cameras show nothing entering or leaving the vault. Motion sensors stay silent. Temperature remains constant at 62 degrees Fahrenheit. But morning comes, and there they are. 3 new scratches, always in a slightly different location. Like something is methodically testing the entire surface, looking for weakness. The sarcophagus inside that vault came from Deir el-Medina, workers' village near the Valley of the Kings, discovered in 1987 during a routine excavation. Limestone, standard New Kingdom construction. Hieroglyphic inscription identifies the occupant as Keeper of the Sealed Chamber. Not a priest, not a scribe, not royalty. A keeper. Someone whose entire job was guarding something sealed. The sarcophagus was empty when they found it, lid still in place, seals intact. But no mummy inside, just hieroglyphic text covering every interior surface. Thousands of characters, dense, repetitive. The translation took 3 years, and what it said made no sense. The text wasn't prayers, wasn't mythology. It was instructions. Step-by-step procedures for maintaining a seal. Specific timing. Every new moon, inspect the binding. Every full moon, reinforce the words. Never allow silence. The moment sound stops, it begins to wake. It begins to wake. What begins to wake? The hieroglyphs don't say, they just repeat the warning, over and over. Different phrasings, same message. Keep it sealed, keep it contained, never let it wake. The Smithsonian cataloged it, sent it to storage, standard procedure for artifacts without obvious display value. That was 2002. The scratches started in 2018. 16 years later. What changed? Here's where things get complicated. In 2017, the Smithsonian acquired another artifact from Egypt. Different provenance, different time period. A sealed clay jar from the Ptolemaic period, about 2,200 years ago. The jar was in perfect condition, still sealed with ancient resin. No cracks, no damage. Acquisition notes said it came from a private collection in Cairo. No excavation details, no archaeological context, just a purchase.
They put it in the same vault as the sarcophagus. Climate-controlled storage, stable environment, plenty of room. 3 months later, the scratches started. Coincidence? Maybe. But listen to this. The clay jar has an inscription. Greek text. Short. Only 8 words. Translation. While one sleeps, the other must remain awake. One sleeps, the other must remain awake. 2 artifacts, 2 warnings, same vault. And something started scratching the door from the inside. Security suggested moving one of the artifacts. Separate storage, different building. The curator in charge refused. Said relocating artifacts without proper documentation and board approval would violate protocol. So both artifacts stayed. The scratches continued. And then something else started happening. Staff working in the sub-basement reported sounds. Low humming. Frequency just at the edge of hearing. About 32 hertz. Below the normal range of human perception, but you can feel it. Vibration in your chest. Pressure in your sinuses. They brought in acoustic engineers, tested for mechanical systems, HVAC, plumbing, electrical transformers. Found nothing. The sound was coming from the vault itself. They installed monitoring equipment, sound level meters, vibration sensors, recorded continuous data for 6 months. The humming was constant.
but it changed. Got louder during new moons, softer during full moons. Exactly the opposite of what the sarcophagus hieroglyphs described. The text said to reinforce seals during full moons. The sound got quieter then, like something was resting, gathering strength. And during new moons, when the text said to inspect bindings, the sound intensified, like something was pushing against containment. One of the researchers analyzing the data noticed something else. The humming wasn't random. It had structure, patterns, repeating sequences with slight variations, like language, like communication. She ran it through audio analysis software.
Isolated the frequency patterns, converted them to visual waveforms. The waveforms matched something, brainwave patterns, specifically theta waves, the frequency your brain produces during deep meditation or light sleep, the state between waking and dreaming. Something in that vault was broadcasting the electromagnetic signature of a sleeping mind. The researcher who discovered this asked permission to investigate further, requested access to the vault, wanted to set up direct monitoring of both artifacts. Permission denied. Project terminated. She was reassigned to a different department. All her research files were classified. She quit 2 months later, gave one exit interview to a colleague, said she couldn't stop thinking about it. The humming, the patterns, the feeling that something was trying to communicate. She said it felt like someone was dreaming, and the dream was starting to leak through. But here's the thing that ties everything together. Remember the Tibetan urn? The one the researcher tried to open? The one that left him unable to speak for 6 months?
When his speech returned, he gave one interview, very brief, very cryptic. He said 3 things. First, the silence is the container. Second, sound is the key. Third, they're not objects, they're anchors. Anchors. Anchoring what? He wouldn't elaborate, refused all follow-up questions. But those 3 statements keep echoing through everything we've discovered. The silence is the container. The sarcophagus text warns about silence, says the moment sound stops, something wakes. Sound is the key. The Smithsonian vault hums, broadcasts patterns, communicates. They're not objects, they're anchors, holding something in place, keeping something contained. But what? Let me show you where this gets truly terrifying. There's a research facility in Norway, remote location, Arctic Circle. Officially, it's a seed vault,
Preserving genetic material from plants worldwide in case of global catastrophe. That's the public story. That's what tourists see when they visit. But beneath the seed vault, there's another level. Not on the architectural plans, not accessible through normal entry points. A separate chamber carved into the mountain. Inside that chamber, 7 sealed containers. I know about this because a geologist working on the facility's expansion found them. Wasn't supposed to. His drill hit a cavity that shouldn't exist, broke through into an open space. He climbed down to investigate, found a room, hexagonal, walls covered in the same geometric symbols we've seen everywhere else, and 7 stone boxes arranged in a circle. Each box about 3 feet cubed. Different materials, different styles, but all sealed, all marked with warnings. He photographed everything, sent the images to his supervisor, expected archaeological teams, expected documentation and study. Instead, he got a visit from men who weren't geologists, weren't archaeologists. They confiscated his camera, deleted his files, offered him a new position, different country, better pay, immediate start date. He took it, moved to Chile,
never talked about what he found. But before he left, he sent one email to a friend, encrypted. Just 3 sentences. They knew the room was there. The vault was built around it. We're not preserving seeds. We're guarding something else. The Norwegian government denies the chamber exists, says it's a misunderstanding, mapping error, conspiracy theory. But satellite imagery from 2006, before the vault was built, shows ground-penetrating radar surveys of the exact location. You can see the cavity, clear as day, hexagonal shape, 7 distinct masses inside. Someone knew it was there, built an international seed preservation facility on top of it, created the perfect cover story,
and staffed it with armed guards who have authorization to use lethal force. To protect seeds? Or to make sure nobody digs deeper? Now let's talk about what happened in 2021. A curator at the Louvre was cataloging items in deep storage. Routine work. Checking inventory against digital records, making sure everything matched. She found a discrepancy. One item in the physical vault that wasn't in the database. No acquisition number, no provenance card. Just a wooden crate, old, covered in dust. The crate had a shipping label, faded, barely legible, dated 1947, origin, Berlin. She opened it. Inside, a metal cylinder, steel, about 18 inches long, 6 inches in diameter, sealed at both ends with welded caps, and etched into the surface, a swastika. Nazi artifact, probably looted during World War II, probably buried in Louvre storage and forgotten during the chaos of post-war cataloging. She should have reported it immediately. Send it to the department that handles repatriation. Standard protocol.
But something made her hesitate. The cylinder was warm. Same temperature anomaly we saw with the Greek gold tablet. Body temperature, 98 degrees. She took it to the conservation lab, ran basic tests, non-invasive examination. X-rays showed something inside. Dense material, organic. But the shape was wrong, not random, too symmetrical, like something folded, compressed. She logged her findings, recommended further analysis, sent the report to her department head. 3 days later, men arrived. Not museum staff, not French officials. They spoke German, wore civilian clothes, showed credentials she didn't recognize. They took the cylinder, took her notes, took her computer, told her the artifact was classified under international treaty, told her to forget she'd ever seen it. She tried to argue. They reminded her that certain wartime materials remain sensitive, that some things are better left undiscovered.
That her cooperation was appreciated and would be remembered. She backed off, kept her job, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. The cylinder was warm. It had been in that crate for 74 years. No power source, no external heat, just warmth, constant warmth, like something alive. She started researching, carefully, quietly, looked into Nazi occult programs. Ahnenerbe, the SS unit dedicated to archaeological research and mystical artifacts. Found references to Project Wächter, Project Guardian, established in 1938, tasked with locating and securing containment artifacts from ancient sites across Europe and North Africa. The project files were mostly destroyed, standard Nazi document purging at the end of the war, but fragments remained. Requisition orders, travel vouchers, shipping manifests. Between 1938 and 1945, Project Wächter recovered 43 sealed artifacts. The manifests listed them by number. Vector 1 through Vector 43. 30 of those artifacts were logged as secured and contained, standard storage protocol. 13 were logged as active containment required. Active containment, not storage, containment. Like they weren't just preserving them, they were keeping something inside them from getting out. What happened to those 13 artifacts? Most were lost. Allied bombing, Soviet invasion, the chaos of Berlin's fall. Records show that Vector 12 was destroyed in an air raid. Vector 27 was captured by Soviet forces, whereabouts unknown. But Vector 33 was specifically marked for evacuation, highest priority. Shipped to Paris in March 1945, 2 months before German surrender. The shipping manifest matches the crate the curator found. Same date, same origin, same destination. Vector 33 sat in the Louvre for 74 years, forgotten, until someone found it. And then, it disappeared again. But here's what keeps me awake at night. The manifest included a note, handwritten, German, single sentence, translation. Under no circumstances allow proximity to Vector 8 or Vector 19. Specific artifacts, specific warnings. Don't let them near each other. Why? What happens when these things get close? I need you to understand something. We're not talking about random archaeological mysteries anymore. We're talking about a deliberate system. Artifacts deliberately created, deliberately sealed, deliberately scattered across the world. And someone, multiple someones across multiple time periods, understood that these things had to be kept separate, had to be contained, had to be monitored. The Egyptian sarcophagus says, maintain the seals, never allow silence. The Tibetan monks say, wait for the time of recognition. The Nazi documents say, keep them apart. Different cultures, different languages, same understanding. These artifacts are dangerous when active, catastrophic when combined. So let me connect the final dots. 30 artifacts. That's the number that keeps appearing. The collector with the rotating sphere dreams of 30. The Nazi records show 30 in secured containment. My research has identified exactly 30 sealed artifacts worldwide that fit this pattern. 30 objects, scattered across 6 continents. Hidden in vaults, buried in tombs, guarded by institutions that deny their significance. What if they're not separate? What if they're components, pieces of something larger? Think about it. The symbols match, the warnings match, the effects match. Humming, heat, movement, dreams, all pointing to the same conclusion. These aren't random, dangerous objects. They're designed, built for a purpose, and that purpose requires all 30. There's a document, declassified in 2015. CIA file from 1962, height of the Cold War. The file describes a meeting, location redacted, participants redacted. But the subject is clear. International Protocol for Contained Archaeological Materials. The document outlines an agreement. United States, Soviet Union, United Kingdom, France, and 7 other nations. They agree to maintain joint custody of certain artifacts, share information, coordinate security, prevent unauthorized access. The agreement specifically mentions 30 primary items and associated secondary materials. 30 primary items. The document doesn't list them, doesn't describe them, just acknowledges they exist and must be protected. Protected from whom? Hostile nations, terrorists, collectors. Number.
The document says protected from convergence. Convergence. Bringing together, combining. The agreement required each nation to maintain separate storage. No more than 3 artifacts in any single facility. Regular inspections. Verification protocols. If any artifact showed signs of activation, immediate notification to all parties. This agreement is still active.
Still classified at the highest levels. Still enforced by intelligence agencies worldwide. Because somebody knows. Governments know. Institutions know. These artifacts can't be allowed to come together. But here's the problem. In 2019, 3 artifacts went missing simultaneously. 3 different locations, 3 different continents. One from a private collection in Mumbai. Indian authorities investigated, found no signs of break-in. Security footage showed nothing. The artifact simply vanished from a locked vault. One from a monastery in Greece, Mount Athos. The monks reported it gone during morning prayers. The storage chamber was undisturbed, seals intact, but the stone box they'd guarded for 800 years was gone. One from a museum in Peru, Nazca region. Earthquake hit the area, magnitude 6.2. When staff returned to check the collections, one sealed ceramic vessel was missing. Debris everywhere. Structural damage. But that specific artifact, carefully removed, deliberately taken during the chaos. 3 artifacts, 3 thefts, same week. Intelligence agencies noticed, activated protocols, started tracking, issued alerts through channels the public never sees. They haven't found them. 4 years later, 3 of the 30 are in the wind, location unknown, possession unknown. And that's when the dreams started. I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound insane, but it's documented, verifiable, real. In 2020, people around the world started reporting the same dream, not similar dreams, the exact same dream. They're standing in a large chamber, stone walls, no doors, no windows. And in the center, objects arranged in a circle. Different numbers depending on the dreamer. Some see 7, some see 12, some see 23. But they all describe the same feeling. The objects are waiting, not passive, active, aware, waiting for something. The dreams intensify during new moons, fade during full moons, exactly matching the patterns we've seen with the artifacts. Psychologists dismissed it. Mass hysteria, internet influence, people reading about mysteries and incorporating them into dreams. But here's what they couldn't explain. The dreamers included people with no internet access, isolated communities, indigenous tribes with no exposure to archaeological news, children too young to read, and they all described the same chamber, same dimensions, same stone texture, same arrangement. A researcher at Johns Hopkins started collecting reports, built a database. Over 3,000 documented cases worldwide, all describing variations of the same dream. She noticed something. The people who dreamed of higher numbers, seeing more objects in the circle, were geographically closer to known artifact locations. People living within 500 miles of the Smithsonian Vault, they dreamed of 27 objects. People near the British Museum, 26. People in Tibet, 30. 30. The complete circle. She published preliminary findings, suggested investigating potential electromagnetic effects from archaeological materials, proposed scanning artifact storage locations for unusual field emissions. Her funding was cut, paper rejected. University suggested she pursue different research. She quit, started working independently, crowdfunded her research,
continued collecting dream reports. In 2023, she disappeared. Last seen at her apartment in Baltimore. No signs of struggle, no evidence of travel. Computer wiped clean. Research files gone. Her family filed a missing person report. Police investigated, found nothing. Case remains open. But 1 week before she vanished, she sent an email to 17 colleagues. Subject line, "I know what they're for." The email body was encrypted, required a key she never provided. 17 people have that encrypted message.
None can open it. Whatever she discovered died with her, or went with her, wherever she is. So now we're here, right now, today. 30 artifacts, 27 accounted for, 3 missing. Governments coordinating containment, intelligence agencies tracking, research suppressed, questions unanswered. And something is changing. The scratches at the Smithsonian are getting deeper, faster. Security reports them twice a day now, morning and evening. Like whatever's making them is working in shifts, never resting. The humming has spread, not just the Smithsonian vault. The British Museum reports similar sounds. Low frequency, structural vibration, no mechanical source. The Norwegian facility increased security, doubled the guard force. No official explanation, just quiet reinforcement of protocols. And the dreams continue. 3,000 cases became 5,000, then 8,000. Now it's estimated over 20,000 people worldwide are having the same dream, same chamber, same circle of objects, same feeling of anticipation. Something is building, accelerating, moving toward a convergence point. What happens when all 30 come together? The Nazi documents warn against it. The international protocols forbid it. The ancient texts describe it as waking, activation. But activation of what? Let me show you one final piece. The piece that made me understand why this matters, why I'm risking everything to tell you this. There's a survivor, one person who was present when an artifact was fully opened and survived to talk about it. She's 93 now, living in a care facility in Scotland. Memory fading. But on good days, she remembers. Her name is Margaret Collis. In 1958, she was a research assistant at Cambridge University, working with a team studying a sealed bronze cube, Celtic origin, found in Ireland, about 2,500 years old. The cube was 4 inches per side, perfectly square, no seams, no openings. Solid bronze. Except it wasn't solid. X-rays showed a hollow interior, empty space, about 2 cubic inches. The team decided to open it, standard archaeological procedure. Document, photograph, preserve. They used acid, carefully dissolved one face of the cube over 3 days, exposed the interior cavity. Inside, empty space, nothing visible, but the air that escaped when they opened it. Margaret says she'll never forget the smell. Not decay, not age. She describes it as the smell of a storm about to break. Ozone, electric, sharp. And the moment the air escaped, everyone in the room felt it. Pressure change, like descending in an airplane. Ears popping, sinuses aching. Then silence. Complete silence. Not quiet. Absence of sound. Like the air itself stopped vibrating. Margaret says it lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt eternal. Like time stopped. Like reality paused to take a breath. When sound returned, one of the researchers was on the floor, unconscious, nose bleeding. He never woke up. Died 3 days later. Massive brain hemorrhage. No prior medical conditions. No explanation. The team sealed the cube immediately. Resin, modern materials. Locked it away. Never spoke about it publicly. But Margaret remembers. And she's willing to talk because she says she has nothing left to lose. Death is close. Truth is closer. She tells me 2 things. First, when the air escaped, I heard something. Not a sound, a word, inside my head. One word, repeated. Witness. Second, the chamber in my dreams. I've been seeing it since that day in '58. 65 years of the same dream. And every year, there are more objects in the circle. When I first started dreaming it, there were 3. Last week, I counted 27. 27. The same number as artifacts currently in known containment. 3 are missing. Her dream shows 27. What happens when her count reaches 30? I need to show you something. Last piece of evidence before we end this. There's a photograph, taken in 2022. Location unknown. Source anonymous. It appeared on an encrypted forum dedicated to archaeological mysteries. Posted once. Downloaded 47 times before the post was deleted. The photograph shows a warehouse. Large, industrial. Empty except for one thing. In the center of the floor, objects arranged in a circle. You can count them. 23. Different shapes, different sizes, different materials, but all clearly ancient. All clearly sealed. And at the very center of the circle, there's a space, marked with tape on the floor. 7 positions, 7 empty spots. Someone is collecting them. Someone has 23 of the 30. They're not hiding them. They're arranging them, following a pattern, preparing for something. The photograph's metadata was scrubbed. No location data, no camera information, no timestamp. Just the image. But analysts found something. Background details. Warehouse construction style, electrical conduit types, ventilation system design. The warehouse is European, probably Eastern Europe, possibly Romania or Bulgaria. Intelligence agencies are searching, satellites are scanning. But Eastern Europe has tens of thousands of warehouses. Finding one specific building with no other identifying information is nearly impossible. And here's what terrifies me most. If someone has collected 23 artifacts, if they're that close to completing the circle, then the 3 missing artifacts aren't lost. They're on their way. Someone is bringing them together deliberately, knowingly, pursuing convergence despite the warnings, despite the protocols, despite everything we know about how dangerous this is. Why? What do they know that we don't? What do they expect to happen when all 30 are together in one place? Margaret Collis heard one word when the Celtic cube was opened. Witness. Maybe that's what we're supposed to do. Bear witness to whatever happens when the circle completes. Or maybe we're supposed to stop it. But how do you stop something when you don't understand it? When every attempt to study it gets shut down? When researchers disappear and files get classified, and the only people who know the truth are too afraid to speak? Here's what I know for certain. The scratches at the Smithsonian are getting deeper. 3 months ago, they penetrated 1/8 of an inch into solid steel. Last week, 1/4 inch. Yesterday, 3/8. At the current rate, they'll breach the door in approximately 60 days. What happens when whatever's making those scratches gets through? The Norwegian facility conducted emergency drills last month.
Evacuation procedures. Not for fire, not for security breach, for containment failure. What are they preparing for? And the dreams, 20,000 cases, are changing. People are starting to report a new element.
They're not just seeing the circle anymore. They're seeing something forming in the center, coalescing, taking shape. Shadow at first, then density, then something with edges, with boundaries, something waking up. The Tibetan monks have started continuous prayer rotations, 24 hours a day, maintaining sound, never allowing silence, because the moment sound stops. The Egyptian hieroglyphs warned us. The Nazi documents confirmed it. The international protocols tried to prevent it. But it's happening anyway. Convergence is coming, whether we're ready or not, whether we understand it or not. And the only question that matters now is this. When all 30 artifacts come together in one place, when the circle completes and whatever they're anchoring breaks free, will we be witnessing the return of something ancient, or the release of something that should have stayed buried forever? Because Margaret Collis told me one more thing before I left. One detail she's never shared before. Said she's kept it secret for 65 years because speaking it aloud made it too real. She said when she heard that word, witness, it wasn't alone. There was a second word, quieter, further away, like an echo from a great distance. The second word was ready. Ready. Not a question, a statement, a confirmation. Whatever these artifacts are anchoring, whatever's been sealed away for thousands of years across 30 separate containers, it's been waiting, listening, measuring time. And now it's ready. Margaret told me this in a care facility room that smelled like disinfectant and old paper. Sunlight coming through thin curtains, institutional furniture. The ordinariness of the setting made her words hit harder. She said it again, slowly, making sure I understood. Ready? Then she looked at me with eyes that have seen 65 years of the same dream and asked me a question I haven't been able to stop thinking about. What if they weren't trying to contain something evil? What if they were protecting something that we're not ready to meet? Let me take you back, way back, to where this whole system might have started. 11,600 years ago, end of the last ice age, sea levels rising, climate shifting, entire landscapes disappearing beneath water. This is when civilization supposedly began. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the earliest known temple complex. Massive stone pillars, sophisticated carvings, built by people we're told were hunter-gatherers who barely had agriculture. The official timeline says humans went from nomadic tribes to master architects practically overnight. No gradual development, no trial and error, just sudden, inexplicable sophistication. But what if that's backwards? What if Göbekli Tepe wasn't the beginning of civilization? What if it was the end of something older? A final project, a last desperate effort before knowledge was lost. Look at what they built. Not homes, not defensive walls, not granaries or workshops. They built a temple, underground, deliberately buried in fill dirt while it was still pristine. They built something magnificent. Then they buried it, on purpose. Why would you do that? Unless you were hiding it, preserving it, making sure it survived for when it would be needed again. Now look at the timeline of our 30 artifacts. The oldest ones date back 8 to 10,000 years, right after the Ice Age, right after sea levels stabilized, right after Göbekli Tepe was buried. What if whoever built Göbekli Tepe also created the containment system? What if they knew something was coming? Some event, some catastrophe, some change, and they needed to preserve something critical until humanity was ready to receive it.
They scattered 30 containers, marked them with the same symbols, passed down oral traditions about maintaining seals, about never allowing them to converge, about waiting for the right time. And then they disappeared, wiped out by rising seas, scattered by climate chaos, their cities submerged, their knowledge fragmented into myths and legends. But the containers remained, waiting, anchoring something in place until the convergence could happen safely. Except we lost the instruction manual. We forgot we were supposed to be waiting for something. We started treating these artifacts as archaeological curiosities instead of what they really are: components of a machine, pieces of a system, a distributed technology that requires all 30 parts to activate. And now, someone's putting it back together. I need to show you what happened in Romania 3 weeks ago. Small town called Hunedoara, industrial area, mostly abandoned warehouses and old Soviet-era factories.
Local police received a noise complaint. Low-frequency hum, vibration rattling windows. Residents couldn't sleep. Some reporting headaches, nosebleeds, disorientation. Police investigated, traced the sound to a warehouse on the eastern edge of town. Large building, corrugated metal exterior. No visible activity, no vehicles, no lights. They approached, found the main door locked, heavy chain, industrial padlock. But the humming was clearly coming from inside, loud enough to feel in their bones. They called for backup, obtained a warrant, cut the chain. What they found inside, the warehouse was empty, completely empty, except for one thing. In the center of the floor, a circle, 30 positions marked with tape, each position occupied by an object, different shapes, different sizes, all ancient, all sealed, all 30. Someone had done it, collected them all, brought them together. The police didn't understand what they were looking at. They photographed everything.
Documented the scene, called for specialists. But before anyone could arrive, the humming stopped. Complete silence. That same absence of sound Margaret described, like reality holding its breath. Then light. The officers described it as pale blue, emanating from the center of the circle. Not bright, not blinding, just present, existing. And in that light, something began to form. The officers evacuated, secured the perimeter, called emergency services, military, everyone. By the time specialized teams arrived 2 hours later, the warehouse was empty again. No artifacts, no circle, no tape marks on the floor, just clean concrete, undisturbed dust, and no sign of the objects, all 30, gone. The Romanian government sealed the investigation, classified everything. The officers were debriefed and transferred. The warehouse was demolished within a week. Official story: structural instability, condemned building, routine demolition. But I spoke to one of the officers. He left the force.
Moved to the countryside, raises sheep now. Doesn't talk about that night. Except he told me one thing. When the light appeared, when something started forming in the center of the circle, he felt something. Not fear, recognition. Like meeting someone you've known your entire life but never actually seen before. He said it felt like coming home. So what happened to the 30 artifacts? They're not in any museum, not in any vault. Intelligence agencies are searching. Satellites are scanning. Nothing. Which means one of two things. Either they were taken somewhere we can't track, somewhere shielded, underground,
underwater, somewhere beyond our detection capabilities. Or they served their purpose, activated, released whatever they were containing, and now they're just inert objects, empty vessels, no longer needed. I think it's the second option, because the dreams stopped. 20,000 people, all reporting the same recurring dream. Chamber, circle, objects, anticipation.
And then 3 weeks ago, the same night as the Romania incident, the dreams stopped. Not gradually, instantly. People woke up the next morning and the dream was gone. No chamber, no circle, no waiting. Just normal dreams. Random, disconnected, personal. Like whatever was broadcasting that shared vision no longer needed to. Because the convergence happened. The circle completed. The anchors released what they were holding. And now it's here. Here's where I need you to pay very careful attention. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but it's documented, verifiable, happening right now. People are changing. Not dramatically, not visibly, but measurably. Cognitive testing shows increases in pattern recognition, problem-solving abilities, spatial reasoning, abstract thinking. It started appearing in data about 4 weeks ago. Standardized tests, IQ assessments, academic performance metrics, across all age groups, all demographics, all countries. A small but statistically significant uptick. Nothing that would trigger alarms, just a few percentage points. Easy to miss if you're not looking. But researchers are noticing. Psychologists, educators, neuroscientists. They're seeing something shift, something change in how people process information, and it's accelerating. What was a 2% improvement 3 weeks ago is now 5%. What was barely detectable is becoming obvious. People are getting smarter, faster, more intuitive, like something unlocked, like a capacity that was always there but dormant, waiting for activation. Remember what Margaret said? What if they were protecting something we're not ready to meet? What if these artifacts weren't containing a threat? What if they were containing potential? Human potential. Locked away until we developed enough, until we proved we could handle it. Think about it. Every major leap in human civilization corresponds to a specific moment. Language, agriculture, writing,
Mathematics. Each one a sudden jump. Not gradual evolution. Quantum leaps in capability. What if those weren't random? What if they were releases? Staged activations of dormant potential built into human consciousness. And what if the 30 artifacts were the final lock? The last barrier before we access something bigger. The ancient texts don't describe a monster being released. They describe waking, recognition, witness. What if what's waking up is us? I know what you're thinking. This sounds like hopeful speculation. Wishful interpretation of scary events. But let me show you something that's harder to dismiss. Remember the researcher from Johns Hopkins? The one who studied the dreams and then disappeared? Her encrypted email. The one sent to 17 colleagues. Subject line: I know what they're for. 2 days ago, someone cracked the encryption. Wasn't easy. Required computational power that shouldn't be publicly available. But someone did it.
The email contained 3 attachments. First, a map, global, showing the locations of all 30 artifacts, with lines connecting them. The lines form a pattern, geometric, precise. When you overlay the pattern onto Earth's magnetic field map, they align perfectly. The artifacts were placed at nodes, intersection points in Earth's electromagnetic grid, like acupuncture points,
regulating flow, maintaining balance. Second attachment, audio file. Frequency analysis of the humming reported at multiple artifact locations. She isolated the patterns, compared them to brainwave data, neural oscillation patterns. The humming wasn't random. It was synchronization, broadcasting a specific frequency designed to entrain human consciousness. Prepare our brains for something, like tuning an instrument before a performance. Third attachment, a letter, written to whoever finally opened the email. She knew it might not be opened until after something significant happened.
The letter says this: "If you're reading this, the convergence has likely occurred. Don't be afraid. This was always the plan. The artifacts aren't prisons. They're catalysts. 30 points of distributed activation designed to unlock latent capacities in human consciousness. We've been dormant, limited, operating at a fraction of potential. The convergence removes those limitations. What comes next depends on what we choose to do with expanded awareness. We're not being invaded, we're being upgraded. The question is whether we're wise enough to handle it." She signed it with coordinates, location in Antarctica, beneath the ice, specific depth, specific geological formation. Satellite ground-penetrating radar of that location shows a structure, massive, symmetrical, buried under 2 miles of ice, built before the ice was there, before Antarctica froze, when it was temperate land, more than 12,000 years ago. Someone built something there. Something large enough to be visible from space, even through ice. And then the climate shifted. Ice buried it, preserved it, waiting. I want to go back to the Smithsonian vault, to the scratches on the door, the ones that were getting deeper every day. They stopped. Same day as the Romania incident. The scratching just stopped. Security checked the vault, door intact, sarcophagus undisturbed, clay jar still sealed. But the humming was gone. The electromagnetic broadcasts, the theta wave patterns, all silent. Like whatever was inside finished its task, completed its purpose, and now it's dormant again. Or maybe it's not inside anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe the artifacts weren't containers. Maybe they were transmitters, broadcasting a signal that kept something locked, kept human consciousness limited, kept us operating at reduced capacity. And when all 30 came together, when the circle completed, the transmission stopped, the locks opened. Not releasing something into the world, releasing us from limitation. Think about what we've been told our whole lives. Humans only use 10% of their brains. That's a myth, right? Neuroscience debunked it. But what if the myth points to a truth we're not allowed to remember? What if we're capable of so much more? What if something has been throttling us, keeping us small, manageable? And what if that throttle just released? Here's what's happening right now, today, this moment. Around the world, people are reporting experiences, synchronicities, moments of knowing things they shouldn't know, feeling connections they can't explain. A mother in Japan wakes up knowing her daughter in California needs help, calls her, finds out she's right. Crisis averted. A scientist in Germany suddenly understands a mathematical proof that's stumped him for years, writes it out in one sitting. It's correct. A child in Brazil starts speaking a language she's never been taught, ancient Greek. Fluent, no explanation. Small moments, individual cases, easy to dismiss as coincidence or anomaly, but there are thousands of them. Tens of thousands, all starting about 3 weeks ago. Collective consciousness researchers are seeing it, documenting it, trying to understand it.
The boundaries between individual minds are thinning, not disappearing, not erasing identity, just becoming more permeable, more connected. Like we're remembering how to be what we were always meant to be, a networked species. Individual nodes in a greater consciousness, each person unique, each person sovereign, but also connected, part of something larger. The artifacts didn't create this capacity. They suppressed it, locked it away, kept it dormant while we developed, while we proved we could handle technology without destroying ourselves. And now the test is over. The locks are open. What we do next is up to us. Let me tell you about Margaret one more time. I visited her again last week. After the Romania incident, after the dreams stopped, after everything changed. She was sitting by the window, afternoon light, birds outside, peaceful. And she was smiling, really smiling, for the first time since I'd met her. I asked if she was still having the dreams. She said no, the dreams were gone, but something better had replaced them. She said she could feel people, not their thoughts, not invasive, just presence, awareness, like knowing someone's in the room even when you can't see them. She said for 65 years she felt isolated, alone with knowledge nobody believed, carrying a burden nobody understood. And now, she didn't feel alone anymore. She said she could feel thousands of people, maybe millions, all waking up to the same awareness, all realizing they're part of something bigger. She looked at me and said, "We were never supposed to be separate. We were supposed to be together. That's what they've been trying to tell us all along." I asked her who they were.
She said, "Us, our ancestors, the ones who built the system, the ones who knew we'd forget, the ones who left the artifacts as timers, as triggers, waiting for the moment when we'd developed enough technology, enough wisdom, enough desperation to be ready for the next step." Then she told me something that made everything click into place. She said, "The artifacts were never about locking something away. They were about unlocking it at the right time, when we were ready, when we needed it most." And we need it now, right now. This moment in history when we're facing problems too big for individual nations, too complex for isolated thinking. Climate collapse, resource depletion, political fragmentation, technological risks. Problems that require collective intelligence, networked thinking, unified awareness. The kind of consciousness the artifacts were preparing us for. I know some of you won't believe this. We'll dismiss it as fantasy, conspiracy theory, hopeful delusion. That's okay. You'll feel it eventually. The shift, the opening, the connection. Or maybe you already have and didn't realize what it was. That moment when you thought of someone and they immediately texted you. That dream that came true the next day. That sudden insight that solved a problem you'd been struggling with. That feeling of being exactly where you need to be. Those aren't coincidences. They're signals. Evidence that something is changing. That we're changing. And it's going to accelerate. Because the locks are open now. The barriers are down. The full potential of human consciousness is accessible for the first time in 12,000 years. What we do with it determines everything. Here's what they don't want me telling you. And by they, I mean the institutions, the agencies, the organizations that have been managing this knowledge, rationing it, controlling access. They knew. Not everything, but enough. Enough to build international protocols. Enough to coordinate containment. Enough to suppress research and silence researchers. They knew the artifacts were more than archaeological relics. They knew convergence was possible. They knew activation would change things.
and they tried to prevent it. Not because they're evil, not because they want to control us, but because they were afraid. Afraid of what happens when people wake up, when consciousness expands, when the old systems of control and limitation stop working. They wanted to manage the transition, control the timing, make it gradual, safe. But someone else had different plans. Someone collected the artifacts, brought them together, triggered convergence ahead of schedule. Who? I don't know. Maybe someone who believed humanity was ready. Maybe someone who saw the crises we're facing and knew we needed every advantage. Maybe someone who found the instruction manual, the real one, the one that explained what the artifacts actually do. Or maybe it wasn't a person at all.
Maybe it was inevitable, predetermined, built into the timing mechanism from the beginning. 12,000 years ago, someone set a clock, placed 30 triggers around the world, and trusted that when the moment came, when humanity needed it most, the pieces would find their way together. And they did. So where does this leave us? Right here, right now, at the beginning of something we don't have words for yet. The evidence is everywhere if you look. Cognitive improvements, synchronicities, connections, awareness. But it's subtle, gradual, gentle, like dawn, not an explosion, an awakening. And it will continue, expand, deepen. Some people will resist it, fight it, try to maintain old boundaries, old limitations. That's natural. Change is scary, especially change this fundamental. But resistance won't stop it. You can't put consciousness back in a box once it's expanded. You can't unlearn what you've remembered. The shift is happening. The question is whether we participate consciously or unconsciously, whether we guide it or get dragged along by it. And that's why I'm telling you this, not to scare you, not to convince you of some grand conspiracy, but to help you understand what's happening, to give you context, framework, perspective. So when you feel it, when you notice the changes in yourself and others, you're not afraid, you're not confused, you're ready. Ready to step into fuller consciousness, fuller potential, fuller humanity. Let me close all the loops, answer the questions, tie everything together. The Chinese bronze vessel, the one that killed researchers, it wasn't toxic. It was concentrated. Pure, distilled activation energy. Too much, too fast, unfiltered. That's why it was dangerous. Not evil, just potent. The Russian stone box, the one that resealed itself. Self-healing materials. Technology beyond our current understanding. But not beyond ancient understanding. They had it. They used it. Then ice ages came, and knowledge fragmented. The copper scroll, the treasure map, not listing gold and silver, listing locations, places where pieces of the system were hidden. 64 locations, more than 30 artifacts, supporting infrastructure, backup systems, redundancy. The Greek gold tablet. Warm, whispering, direct neural interface, communicating at frequencies below conscious awareness, preparing minds, planting seeds. The Baghdad batteries. Not primitive attempts at electrochemistry, sophisticated power cells, ancient technology, pieces of a larger energy grid. The Tibetan urn, the monastery guardians, oral tradition preserved across centuries, waiting for the time of recognition. And the time came. 3 weeks ago. They knew. That's why the researcher couldn't speak. He wasn't traumatized. He was activated,
prematurely, before his neural architecture was ready. The Norwegian vault, the 7 containers beneath the seed preserve, not separate from the 30.
Part of the support system, regional nodes, maintaining local stability while the global network initializes. The Nazi program, Project Vector. They understood fragments, misinterpreted the purpose, thought controlling the artifacts meant controlling power, didn't realize the artifacts control themselves, activate on schedule, regardless of who possesses them. The Smithsonian scratches, not something trying to escape, something trying to wake the researchers, get their attention, communicate. Mission accomplished, attention received. Scratching unnecessary now. The rotating sphere, the dreams of 30. Pattern recognition. The collector's mind synchronizing with the network, receiving information, downloading context, preparing for activation. The Baltic Sea disk, not a lid, a marker, pointing to what's beneath. Ancient facility, underwater city, preserved, waiting. More to discover, more to remember. Margaret's 65 years of dreams, not trauma, not curse, transmission. She was receiving the signal, maintaining the memory, serving as witness, living bridge between old knowledge and new understanding. And the Johns Hopkins researcher, not disappeared, relocated, by choice. She found the instruction manual, understood the plan, went to Antarctica, to the structure beneath the ice, to verify, to document, to prepare. She's there now, I believe that, along with others who've figured it out, who've chosen to step fully into the transition, to become guides, bridges, teachers. And when the ice melts, as it's melting now, that structure will be revealed, and we'll remember everything. I need to tell you one final thing, the most important thing. This video will be deleted, not by me, not by choice. I've already received warnings, polite at first, then less polite, then threats. Organizations that don't officially exist, agencies with no public names, people who maintain the old systems, the old controls. They can't stop the shift. But they can slow information, control narratives, suppress evidence. This video contradicts official stories, challenges institutional authority, reveals things that were classified for reasons. It will be flagged, removed, taken down. How long it stays up depends on how fast it spreads, how many people download it, save it, share it. That's why I need you to do something, right now, before you finish watching. Share this, not just with friends, with everyone. Email, text, social media, download it, repost it, make copies. Because once it's gone from this platform, it's gone. My account will be terminated. My research will be confiscated. And this information will disappear. Unless you preserve it. Unless you spread it. Unless you make it too distributed to suppress. This isn't entertainment. This isn't clickbait. This is the most important information you might ever receive, and they're counting on you doing nothing. Watching, forgetting, moving on. Prove them wrong. Spread the truth before they delete it. And if you think I'm exaggerating, if you think this is paranoia, let me tell you what happened yesterday. My apartment was searched. Professional job. Nothing obviously disturbed, but things moved. Drawers opened, files accessed. They didn't take anything, didn't need to. They were sending a message. We know where you are.
We know what you have. We can reach you anytime. I've made arrangements, backups, dead man switches. If something happens to me, everything gets released. Every document, every source, every piece of evidence I've collected over 5 years of research. But I'd rather it not come to that. I'd rather share it now, while I can control the context, while I can explain it properly. So please, take this seriously. Share this widely. Save it locally. Because what I'm describing isn't coming. It's here, happening now. And your awareness of it matters.
The more people who understand what's happening, the smoother the transition will be. The less fear, the less resistance, the more conscious participation in our own evolution. We're not victims. We're not being invaded. We're not under attack. We're waking up. Finally. After 12,000 years of limited consciousness, of fragmented awareness, of separation, we're remembering what we were, what we're meant to be, what we've always had the potential to become. And the 30 artifacts were the alarm clock, set by our ancestors, timed perfectly, activating exactly when we needed them most. Not a moment too soon, not a moment too late. Right now. I'm going to end with something Margaret told me. Last thing she said before I left. She held my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, "Tell them not to be afraid. Tell them this is homecoming, not invasion. Tell them they already know this truth, deep down, in the parts of themselves they've been taught to ignore." Tell them to trust that knowing. Trust the connection. Trust the awakening. Then she smiled, peaceful, content, and said, "We're going to be okay. Better than okay. We're going to be whole." I believe her, because I can feel it too now. The connection, the awareness, the sense that I'm part of something vast and beautiful and ancient and new all at once. You can feel it too, if you let yourself. That quiet knowing, that subtle certainty, that recognition of truth your rational mind can't quite explain. Trust it. Follow it. Let it guide you into whatever comes next. Because the artifacts have served their purpose. The locks are open. The barriers are down. The full potential of human consciousness is available for the first time in recorded history. What we build with it, how we use it, what we become, that's up to us now. All of us, together, connected, awakening. The time of recognition has arrived, not for the artifacts, for ourselves. Recognizing what we've always been beneath the limitations, beneath the programming, beneath the fear. Infinite, connected, consciousness experiencing itself through billions of unique perspectives. And now remembering, finally, fully, completely. Welcome home.